Hi guys, my name is Oneal and I'm a food writer, and I've been asked today to speak on carving new horizons by the TEDxMEC team. And it's an honor to be here and to speak to you about a few things that I've done differently from what I see around me. So that's the idea. So let me first talk about things that we all know, which is about food. So what do we know? What do we see? And what we feel and what we perceive about food. All these are subjective. Everybody has their own opinion. Everybody is a food blogger in their own realm. But for me, it's much more beyond what we see, what we perceive. And that's why I've actually stuck to certain beliefs that I believe in, and I hope it works for you as well, because I'm not your motivational speaker. I'm not gonna try to motivate you. This might demotivate you, because if you're doing things that's actually working for you and I give you a different picture, it might demotivate you. But the idea is you'll have more questions at the end of this whole speech of mine. You'll have more questions than answers. I'm not here to provide you answers. I'm here to provide you certain questions that you need to think, you need to actually analyze, and maybe put into your life. So that's the idea. So what I've done here is, when we're saying carving new horizons, is for me it's about staying real, staying raw, and staying unprocessed. And the same way, you could too. Everybody is talented in their own way. Everybody's gifted, and everybody has their own gifts. So people don't realize it until a certain point. Like, I'm a former lawyer and a restaurateur, and then in between, I was a writer as well. I published a book. I'm an author, and right now I'm currently working on a book. So based on that, during the lockdown, I did some videos called Lost Recipes, which is basically about forgotten recipes, and that's how I got enough notice. So the first thing that we're dealing with today is this whole point about notice. So I'm comparing it with the seven deadly sins, and the first of it is greed. So when we come to greed, I'm talking about notice. Now you have content, you have a content with you, and you want it to have notice. You tag people as much as you like. You want attention, but do you want that kind of attention? That's the idea. You want notice. Your content is what you should believe in. If you try to perfect your content and you put more time on your content, see, that's the kind of greed you need to have. So when I analyze greed, and you see a lot of food bloggers, food writers, they tag other people to get notice. Maybe it might help a few people, but it might not help everybody. And it's also annoying, to be honest. When you get so many tags for things you're not related to, you wonder why does this person want to seek my attention? When I'm sitting in a place where I'm doing something about food and somebody else tags me, I don't know that person. Why is he or she tagging me? So it's inconclusive. You don't do things that's inconclusive, because again, this is something that I try to avoid, not tagging too many people. So that's greed for me. Now moving on to the next one, which is sloth. Sloth is, for example, now we all know, we all go to eat out, and we see something, and we see what the menu says, what the chef says to us. That's the information that is there on the face. The menu says, mind it too, which is, you need to mind what you see on the menu. If you don't apply your brains, your mind, your analysis, your thinking about what the chef is saying. Suppose the chef tells you that, like, you have gold in this soup. And then if you're not able to tell that there's actually no gold in it, then it's difficult. You're actually fooling your audience by telling, repeating verbatim what the chef told you, or what the management told you about that gold is there in the soup. So that's the idea. You need to analyze. For that, Google is not the place. You can't validate information on Google and Wikipedia, so you need to research. If you don't research, you can't assess. You just make an ass of yourself. That's why I try to avoid that. You do not speak about things you don't know. You need to actually educate yourself as much as possible, research on what it is, and do not go by face value. If you see something, yeah, I know you need to taste it to believe it, but you also need to analyze why it's delicious. You can't simply say delicious to your audience, or you can't simply say I don't like this. You need to justify why you don't like it or you like it. That's what I try to avoid, which is sloth. To sleep on what you know. You need to always educate yourself, because things are changing, so you need to change accordingly as well. And the next one that I'm talking about is envy. Now, it is a possibility, or it is actually relevant today, because you compare yourself with somebody, some other blogger, some other writer, some other celebrity, Instagrammer, whoever it is. You do not compare your content with theirs, because that's regressive. That's not progress. You don't progress from where you were before. You want to improve from yourself. What you were yesterday, you don't want that to be repeated. You want to improve on what you were yourself yesterday. So that's what I believe in. You compare yourself to what you were before and then improve on it, instead of comparing yourself or your work with others. See, what works for them might not work for you. It's not like that, because I stick to what I do best, and I don't let Instagram analytics to come in my way, to tell me to do things to please an audience, to do things repeatedly, to encourage monotony. I don't do that. I don't believe in mundanity, to repeatedly do the same thing. So I try to improvise or improve on what content I give my audience, or anybody should do the same thing. And that's why you envy your potentials, believe in your content, and work on it, improve on the same thing, and be better than what you were yesterday. That's it. You don't need to be aiming for the Ks, 100Ks, 200Ks, 250Ks. That's not an approval for your content. That's an approval for people who like you, or maybe not even people, maybe bots. No idea. There might be brands who are looking for you, and the bots want to find it. So that's the idea about Instagram analytics. If you go working with Instagram analytics, the whole passion drive is lost. You came here for some purpose. You wanted to explore your passions more. You wanted to write more. You wanted to analyze food more. You wanted to think about food. You wanted to actually give a different perspective about food, the one that you know, and then you get influenced. So that's why you do not compare yourself with anybody. Regardless of where the position you are right now, if you were better than yesterday, then you are doing something right. So that's why envy yourself instead of envying others. So the next one that we are talking about is gluttony. Now, gluttony is something that I do not endorse, even otherwise. In terms of being a food writer, I do not endorse gluttony. Mindful eating, that is very important. Now, in terms of what we are analyzing right now, gluttony is when you get cheap thrills and stomach fills by doing content that is repeatedly monotonous and doing the same thing over and over again, because you believe it worked for somebody else, so it's going to work for you as well. Now, that is wrong thinking, because it's the same thing. It's like somebody posted about a shawarma, for example, and you want to post the same thing. You actually forget that before Instagram, before social media, how would you go to a new place? You don't need an invite to go to that place. You hear about a new place. You don't want a blogger to tell you that this place is there and you need to go there. Yes, it's good for visibility in terms of, like, say, you get to know there is a place there. But you would create a drive uninfluenced. You want to create the same kind of drive uninfluenced. So you don't do the same thing. If you want an audience that is not fake, that is appreciative, you give them different things. You don't give them the same thing. If you are comfortable doing just one thing alone, you don't progress. How can you achieve progress yourself as a person individually by doing the same content again? Because you will be good at doing only that thing, and you will have an audience only for that particular thing that you focus on. So you move away and drift away from your passions. If you wanted to be a good food writer, that's not what you should do. You should give a different picture for everything that you do. It's not like, you can talk about one particular thing. For example, if you talk about Kerala food, since I'm from Kerala, we see a lot of food bloggers. That's not the only thing that you can talk about. You can work on other cuisines and you can talk about them too. And that's why, in terms of repeatedly doing the same thing, I actually consider it gluttony, because you are avaricious for more followers and more likes, and your content is driven in that way now. Instead of focusing on your passions, you have drifted away from what you want to do, what makes you happy. So I wouldn't do anything. See, that's the thing, that I would do things that make me happy, because that's more important. See, this Instagram is a whole rat race. If you're going to compare yourself with people around you and how many Ks they've built in over a small period of time and what's worked for them, and you are taking analysis, you're studying somebody else. Spend that time studying yourself. and improving yourself instead of studying what patterns work with others, because that's the same thing. It's monotony. Monotony is for the weak. So you want to strengthen yourself by not comparing yourself with others, but compare yourself with your content that you used to do and how far you've improved. It's good to look back onto your Instagram handles or your Facebook or your YouTube and see how much you have improved with or without the help of technology, but by building your knowledge. So that's gluttony for you. So that's one thing that I avoid. And now the next one, which is what we're talking about, the next deadly sin, pride. Pride is when you've established yourself as a good food blogger or a food writer or anybody on Instagram. You can find lots of public figures on Instagram nowadays. Anybody and everybody claims to be a public figure. But if you have an audience, for example, that actually appreciates your content and appreciates your work, then you don't ride on that pride. Okay? Like I was saying before. Now, there have been instances when you are actually consumed by your fame that you wait for a new place to invite you to go there to eat. You do not actually, you forget the fact that you're a foodie, you're a food enthusiast. If something new has come to my city, I want to try it. I don't want a blogger to tell me, yeah, this is so good, this is delicious, this is wow, this is excellent, whatever. I would follow a few people who would tell me exactly what it is. Like, for example, if it's not like we all watch MasterChef, like say somebody would be saying, oh, this is a bit under, like Gordon Ramsay. But you can also look at other people as well. There are so many other shows you can combine. Like there's Netflix, there's so many other series that you should actually be educating yourself on, and so you can speak to your audience on the same thing. See, this is something very, very trivial, something basic that everybody does. But apart from all this, apart from what is actually given to you by an influencer, being uninfluenced, you can research on your own as well. You can find out what it is, because that is more important. Remember days before anything, Instagram or social media, if somebody was doing something specific, there would be a competition or there would be a certain sort of a special TV show or something that you watch that captivates you to that person. And that person would be telling you his experiences. Now, that is something that you used to do before Instagram. When it's Instagram, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and you don't know what to choose from. So being different is very, very important. And that's why when you talk about pride, don't ride on this. Because education is what separates you from being there forever. So if you've reached the top, if you are number one, if you've got what you want, give it back so that you stay there and you don't come down. That's why that is very important. That is the most important sin that I avoid, which is pride. Now for the next one, which is what we're talking about, is wrath. Anger. Control your anger. Everybody tells you. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist to tell you that. But wrath is something that is another deadly sin, which is basically when the power of a review. Now, when somebody actually claims to be a food reviewer or a food blogger, the power is misused. Now he has verified attention. You have so much attention that it gets to you, that you only have time to build an audience. You have time to make content for your audience, for your following. You want to make them happy so that you sustain there. Now that's not the way you sustain at number one. Because what you're doing is you're not giving back to the industry that supported you, which is by taking your wrath, your anger on them. You know your review is powerful. So what you do is, like everybody, like Google and TripAdvisor and Zomato and whoever it is that gives you the power as a common man to review a place. But there are certain ethics that you need to follow. There are some responsibilities. Now, if you've crossed the levels of food blogger, food writer, and become a restaurant consultant, or you claim to be a restaurant consultant, then it's even more important that the first thing you do, basic as a restaurant consultant, is to inform the management before you inform your audience. Because, follows and likes are always going to be there. If you make good content, it's going to be there. But if you're going to be talking about negatives, you know what? You create a thread of negative and hate comments. You are promoting something that's not required. You actually work to the detriment of the industry. Because you're not giving back to the industry what they gave you. Because of these places being around, you go and eat. You, as a foodie or a food enthusiast, is a very common person who actually goes and eats out. You want places to survive. So, for that reason, if you're a restaurant consultant, I agree. For everything that you're good at, you need to be paid. But there are certain things that you can actually tell the management first and see how receptive they are to their feedback. If they're not receptive to the feedback, yes, you can engage your audience in the same. But unless they're not receptive to their feedback, what you're doing is absolutely not required, which is basically saying something negative. If you have something to substantiate, you need to justify why it's negative. And that's why your anger should always be at bay. Wrath can be taken on many ways, but do not misplace somebody's business or disrupt it by your actions. You have to be responsible. Now that is a time you become even more responsible than you were before, because you're dealing with a lot more people, and so many people from different parts of the world is going to see you. When they view you, you want to paint a picture that's exactly the same that you felt. How do you do that? Yes, I do it with writing. That's why I call myself a food writer. But for a blogger, it's easy. You can take a video, you can put it, you can start a hate comment thread. That's what happens. But that's what you should avoid. I think you can actually nicely put it to your audience as well. Because there are negative comments. Restaurants are supposed to be receptive about it. But the way you explain it makes a lot of difference. So you can't be prima donna all the time. It's like you are unquestionable. No, you are questionable for your actions. Like, for example, I see a lot of people writing on their bios, DM for collaborations. Has anybody actually asked you how much business in return? So as long as they don't ask you that, and as long as Instagram does not require you to validate your information through footnotes, you can pass whatever information you like. And that's why so much of content is misinformation and disinformation. And you've all seen the social dilemma. So you know what to believe, what not to believe. So the same way, to your audience, be honest. Be honest to your audience. Tell them what actually it is. Now, the last sin that I'm talking about is lust. Now, this is the most interesting of all sins. Lust. What do you lust for? It's a very strong emotion. What do you lust for? Obviously, everybody wants to be famous, popular, and a celebrity on Instagram. Now, if you are going there not to pursue your passions, but to become famous, then this does not apply, because you can keep lusting for it. So for me, I've put it as Vox Populi, Vox Desi, which is basically what works with every blogger in India, which is the voice of the Desi. You go to the streets. If you're in Delhi, you cover a chole bhature, chana chaat, whatever it is, and you put it on your feed, you get a large audience, because people invoke nostalgia out of this. If you come to Kerala, it's beef fry and parota, and you talk about Malabar Arabic food. So that's the idea. You get more likes for this, but it's mundane, it's monotonous, it's repetitive. It's not gonna give you anything except for followers and likes. That was not the purpose for you to take to Instagram, for me at least. I took to Instagram to be real, to be raw. Now, there's a private life I enjoy as well. That's not something on Instagram. That's not something that's supposed to be on Instagram. Everybody has their own privacies. And I don't want to disrupt somebody else's privacy. The same way, I do not paint a picture of what my personal life is. Like, if I have to smile, it should be a smile that's coming out of me. It's not like for me to show off that I am some rich snob activist, sitting there on my dad's money. I wish I could do that. I mean, I wish I could just go to places, smoke up, do whatever I want, and just lay back and relax. But I don't have that. You need to work to obviously make money in this world right now, when we have been affected by the pandemic right now, and everybody has lost their disposable incomes. It's become extremely more difficult for writers. I mean, freelance writers like me. And it's become extremely difficult for a lot of people who are downsizing their employees, and there are a lot of freelancers around. So how do you stay unaffected? If Instagram is your happiness, do what makes you happy. If that's where you find your happiness, do things for your own happiness and not to please an audience, because the audience is going to go again. It's not going to be like forever. You need to work. You need to put enough work for you to sustain it at the top. So that's something that I actually believe that everybody forgets what's what's their own purpose. Like, for example, if me, I just keep promoting desi food about only the things that I see, then I'm a frog in the pond. I'm just staying there where I am. I don't go out. Even birds fly out of their homes, go to different parts and then come back to say home is the best. That's why you don't want to be a frog in the pond. You want to explore things. You don't have to necessarily despise everything Western. That was done before independence to get rid of things which were British at that time. But you don't need to necessarily do that. If you actually want to portray a different thing or be different, you actually go and study about it and then talk about it. If you don't know how to talk about Western, just don't talk about it. I mean, that's what people should avoid. Do not pass information that you're not, sure about. There is so much of misinformation you don't want to add to it. So if you want to talk about Western food, you need to, but you don't need to despise it completely just because you don't know about it. Work on it, work on yourself, and then I'm pretty sure you will also be able to talk about Western food. So like, if you take a scenario of the chef schools in India, you ask any graduate where he wants to be. He wants to be working abroad. He doesn't want to be working in India. He doesn't know how to cook regional food. He's forgotten the importance of what he's eaten at home. He wants to do Italian food. But you should also imagine the fact that an Italian restaurant or an Italian chef from Italy, he cannot come here and cook a biryani or a beef and parota the same way as you do. The same way, if you go out, they're going to be asking you first to cook your own food. If you are a person who's wanting to do well in the food industry, you first need to be knowing your basics, but you need to progress as well. It's your ambition to learn Italian food. But first, you learn what you want. But that's it. You should actually reach a level where you actually grow out of it. Not just desi food. Go appreciate every kind of food, every kind of culture. See, that's what makes the difference between, being monotonous, being boring, being repetitive, and being different. Now, I'm not doing anything that is, something very great and successful. I can't say I've been successful in what I've been doing, but I've been different. All the way, if somebody feels that I'm different, is because I do things differently. It's because I focus on doing things differently because I have a lot of questions inside me. The same way, today, after listening to me for around 18 minutes, maybe you might not be motivated. You might be demotivated if you've been doing things that I've been addressing in this steadily since, and you feel demotivated. Ask the same questions to yourself. Question yourself, question your abilities, question your, when you're actually competing for real, for a competition, for a youth festival, if you've done it, if you've, during your college days, during your school days, you would be at your competitive best. You would not put substandard content the same way. You want to be at the best, so that's why I make content that is not necessarily limited to Instagram. It should be beating what's there on TV. So that's how I make content. That's how we think differently. Because you want to give a picture that nobody's ever painted. All right, thank you so much for allowing me to speak on this topic. And I hope you had, at the end of the speech, at least got to know my name, Oneal. Happy eating all.